Welcome back to the final episode of our civilization series where we try to beat the artificial intelligence on the difficulty level of Deity, and within the last video we pretty much got rid of Japan. Actually, most of the cities were sieged down by Egypt, not by us. So we waited until Egypt sieged down the walls, and then we conquered the cities, or the free cities, which flipped away from Egypt. But now we are stuck with a really hard enemy at the end. So it is Egypt, and it's really the final showdown. And if we look around within our own lands, we can see that there are a lot of barbarian units. So as I said in the last video, those are not barbarians which appear due to unhappiness or stuff like that. So these are all barbarians which appear because of spies of Egypt, and they recruit them to annoy us pretty much. And if we also look on the continent itself, maybe we saw it before, and we can see that Egypt has tons of high-tech units. They are all stacked one over another, and for instance, if you have a triple unit of war tanks, of battle tanks, then that's not something which you can just take lightly. So you can see it right here, for instance, here in the north, tons of tanks and ships and helicopters. And now if I look at my forces, at the moment I really don't see any chance how I can defend against Egypt. So if Egypt would actually declare war on me at this time, I really think I would really struggle hard. But fortunately, Egypt didn't declare war yet. So my goal throughout this period of peace will be to build a little sea fleet, maybe get some stacked missile cruisers, so that I at least might have a chance of defending against Egypt. And if the war takes long enough, then maybe I can weaken the enemy army, and maybe I have a chance to conquer the cities, and especially the capital of Egypt, because it's domination. I just need to conquer the capital, or maybe we have to go for nukes, who knows. But now let's skip a bit forward. So now it is 15 turns later, and I finally felt confident enough to declare war on Egypt. While Cleopatra still has a much larger army than myself, I might at least have a little bit of a surprise element, and of course my units are well positioned. For instance, within Takamatsu you see there is a war district, and there I have a rocket artillery, and this rocket artillery is actually capable of attacking the coastal city of Nagano. Now, will this artillery be enough to siege down Nagano? Not really. If we look at the city strength at the moment, a rocket artillery does not do that much damage. So you need a couple of units to be capable of sieging down a city at this point of the game. Or maybe let's phrase it differently. You can actually siege down a city with one rocket artillery, but it will take a really long time. Now, while I moved some of my land units to the other continent in order to mostly defend my own cities, I also created some sea units. The cool thing about sea units is that you can park them in one of your cities. They can attack, they can shoot out of the cities, and they cannot be attacked because they are protected within the city. So you can, within a city, you can stack a land unit, a sea unit, and then of course you have your city itself, which is capable of attacking. So basically, if one of your own cities is attacked, you have 3 ways how to defend. Now the problem is, at this point of the game, I was only capable of defending because as soon as I moved the sea units out of my cities and into the sea connecting these 2 continents, I realized that the whole sea was filled with enemy yet invisible submarines. So for the next couple of turns, my job was to survive the counter engage of Egypt, clear as many units as possible and trying to not lose any units, as well as of course not lose any cities. So if I would have lost a city, one of my coastal cities, that would have been a very hard hit. Now at the moment the sea looks pretty clean, and actually also the cities which I took from Japan, from the new continent, they don't look really threatened, but keep in mind that we actually surprised Egypt. They don't have their units in position, and you will see in just a couple of turns that there will be an overwhelming amount of units flooding into our lands. To my surprise, I was a bit worried that I might lose cities on the new continent. The cities on the new continent actually were quite resistant. So as you can see, the artificial intelligence messed up tons of units here on the border, but kind of failed to inflict damage on my city walls and on my fortifications. So aside from all the units which we see right here, the Egyptian Empire also had access to aircrafts. So now all these units together with aircrafts should be capable of inflicting quite a lot of damage. So if these units were controlled, for instance, by a human player, it would have been good game immediately. But now you see kind of the strange decisions of the artificial intelligence. For instance, they sent all the units towards Okayama, while they had a really easy access towards Shizuoka. So I think if the whole fleet went towards Shizuoka instead of Okayama, then, well, I would have been in deep trouble. Now, sending all these units through pretty much the whole continent gives me the opportunity to attack those units for a couple more of turns. So yeah, most of the units, as soon as they arrive, they are already a little bit damaged and low. And since tanks take damage when they attack cities, yeah, I am quite capable of defending against the incoming intruders, at least on the Japanese continent. On the other hand, I have to say that all these incoming units prevent myself pretty much from inflicting damage. So the only position where I currently inflict damage is at the side of Nagano with my rocket artillery, but you maybe saw it for a moment. It has been like 4 or 5, now you see it right here, yeah. So the rocket artillery pretty much does no damage at all, and with that pace I won't be able to siege down Nagano anytime soon. So like I said, aside from this rocket artillery, all my units are in defensive mode, and while things seemed to be in balance at the moment, things got worse and worse. And now you see me do a lot of cuts right now because this whole war took quite a while, and you see now Egypt landed with a couple of units on my old continent. And this was quite worrisome. As you can see, on my old continent, they actually damaged some of the city walls quite drastically. So the problem is, as soon as the city walls are broken through, your cities cannot counterattack. So what I decided to do was to set up some airports and to create a little air fleet by myself. Basically, throughout the whole war, I was not capable to utilize the aircrafts offensively against enemy cities. Instead, I had to utilize them in order to clean all the intruding tanks and artilleries which went onto my continent. Now, of course, often it is not possible to clean all these units in one turn. So what these units are doing is at the moment they are not taking away my cities, but they are destroying districts. And yeah, all of this is of course very bothersome. And now, before I said there were tons of submarines hidden inside the waters. A couple of turns have passed again, and now you just see here are quite a lot of submarines already. If we count, we see, starting from the right, 1, 2, 3, 4, I see here 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Here we see 9 submarine units just on this little screen, and they are all stacked, so it is always 3 of these submarine units. So we just on this little screen we see about 30 submarines. Now in the next incoming cut it gets even more ridiculous. Now just look at that. So you see my whole coastline was filled with submarines. And of course, this gets quite dangerous because, like I said before, they are starting to siege on the walls. Now you see they are already inflicting damage to the walls of Gelonos, and here they already pretty much siege down the walls of Gelonos. And as soon as they have destroyed your walls, you cannot attack with the city anymore. And by that you lose a lot of defensive power. And of course, the rate in which the artificial intelligence is pumping units, at some point they will just overwhelm you and siege down your city. So the problem is, what can you do to get rid of all these submarines? Now, building more submarines might be an option. I mean, own submarines. The problem is, as soon as you create more submarines, they have to leave the harbor. And of course, against all these submarines, as soon as you leave the harbor, the enemy submarines will shoot down your own submarines. So building own submarines is not really an option in that scenario. So you need something else. And as I said before, the solution I was aiming for was building aircrafts. But even though I have 4,000 gold right here, an aircraft is very expensive. It's about, I think, like 1,500 gold, some stuff like that. So I wouldn't get a large army immediately. But of course, aircrafts are really helpful because you can stack like 6 aircrafts on one tile, on one airport, and then you can attack, for instance, the enemy submarines with all your aircrafts. You see it right here. So I think this is actually one of the first aircrafts I built, and as you can see, I utilized them to clean my own lands, which have been damaged a little bit already. But of course, they were also very helpful against all these submarines. Another thing which was really helpful against the masses of enemy units was that actually Egypt did not really focus its attacks, but instead it spread its attacks. Now it attacked me kinda everywhere. Like you saw it before, they were attacking Gelonus, and actually it was quite scary since they already sieged down the whole city wall. But then they kind of spread their attack, like I said, and for instance, a little bit to the northeast, you see them attacking my city of Sendai, and everywhere they were attacking and like putting pressure on the city walls. But if they would really have focused on any of my cities, then the game would have been over very quickly. Now, spreading their attacks allowed me to fire back with all my cities and with the ships which I stationed within the cities. So pretty much in all of my coastal cities I had one unit of submarines, like one armada of submarines consisting of 3 submarines. So pretty much I had defensive capabilities everywhere, but like I said, if they would just attack one point, I wouldn't have any chance to resist against the incoming forces. Now, something which is quite funny is that if you look at the city of Nagano, which is the city I attacked throughout the last couple of turns with my missile artillery, at least the city walls are down right now. You can see it, you just saw it quickly here. So the life bar of the city is yellow, but you have to think about it. Now, since the war started, it have been 15 turns, and it took my missile artillery, which is also supported by a great general, I have to say, so it should inflict a little bit more damage. And you see, with pretty much the strongest siege unit in the game, it takes me 15 turns to siege down one of the smaller cities of the Egyptian Empire. Now, even though I did some progress at the front of Nagano, it felt like I was falling behind more and more, while the Egyptian Empire was massing more and more units on more and more fronts. So I think at this rate I would have lost the game. So what I decided to do was, since the war was a bit stagnant and I was kind of losing it, I would create spaceports and start building nukes. But as you see right here, they were pretty much attacking me everywhere. Now this is the southeast of my original continent, so it is pretty much the other side of the world. So as you can see, I really had to push forward with building nukes. I think the longer the game would take without nukes, the higher the chance was that I would lose the game. Now, after pretty much exactly 30 turns, I was finally able to capture Nagano, but on the other hand, if we look for instance at Gelonus, we can see that it was completely sieged down, and probably the next 2 or 3 turns I would have lost this city. So now, after all this talk, it was finally time. Well, you might have guessed it, the nukes. Well, Cleopatra certainly didn't like that, so she promptly offered me a peace offering, and it was, quite to my surprise, really insane. Now all this stuff you see here is great, but now, as you can see here, she just gave me like 7 or 8 of her cities, and by that one nuke I pretty much won the game. But why finish the game in a regular way if we still can have some fun? So after the peace treaty ended, I immediately redeclared war, and now let's have some fun. So guys, thanks a lot for watching. I had really great fun playing this game, and it was actually the first time I beat Deity in Civilization 6. I hope it was a bit educational. If not, then at least I hope it was entertaining. I had fun at least. And if you like videos where people go for the hard modes of games, then subscribe to my channel. More awesome stuff is coming. So see you again.